By the mid-1990s, the back panel of a standard beige desktop tower had become a museum of incompatible intentions. A DB9 serial port for the mouse, a DB25 parallel port for the printer, 2 PS2 round ports, color-coded purple and green, one for the keyboard, one for the mouse, and plugging them into the wrong socket meant, at minimum, a forced restart. Somewhere nearby, a game port waited for a joystick that might never arrive. Each connector carried its own pinout, its own signaling logic, its own failure mode, and each one demanded that someone, the user, the IT technician, the manufacturer's phone support line, absorb the cost of making it work. That cost was rarely visible on a price tag. It lived in the 20-minute detour through a printer installation booklet. It lived in the driver floppy disk that shipped with a serial mouse and promptly went missing. It lived in the cable drawer every household and every office maintained. A tangle of parallel printer cables, gender changers, dongle adapters, and connectors for devices no one could quite remember buying. For IT departments running dozens or hundreds of machines, the arithmetic was worse. Every distinct port type meant a distinct driver package, a distinct failure path, a distinct entry on a help desk ticket printout. Multiply that across a fleet of desktops, each with a slightly different motherboard I/O shield, and compatibility became a recurring line item disguised as normal operations. The devices themselves were capable enough. A parallel printer could move pages. A serial mouse tracked fine. PS2 keyboards were durable and responsive. The problem was never individual performance. It was the aggregate friction of an ecosystem built on dozens of independent connector standards, none of which shared a common discovery mechanism, a common power rail, or a common way to tell the operating system what had just been plugged in. USB entered that landscape as a consortium proposal, backed initially by a small group of chipset and platform companies, with a deceptively simple premise: one physical connector family, one standardized enumeration sequence, power delivered over the cable, support for multiple devices through hubs. The early specification, finalized in the mid-90s, described a system where a host controller could detect a newly connected peripheral, request its identity, load the appropriate driver, and begin communication, all without requiring the user to open a manual or restart the machine. On paper, that enumeration sequence was the core engineering contribution. In practice, the promise meant nothing without an operating system capable of executing it. Early USB Type-A ports appeared on a handful of motherboards and expansion card brackets before the software stack was ready to support them reliably. The result was a brief, awkward period in which the physical hardware existed, but the experience remained fragile. Driver prompts interrupted the process. System restart dialogues appeared at inconvenient moments. Peripheral manufacturers hedged their bets by continuing to ship parallel and serial versions of the same device. A USB cable was only as useful as the driver infrastructure behind it. Two developments cracked the stalemate. Windows 98 shipped with substantially broader USB class driver support, making common peripherals, mice, keyboards, printers, and similar devices work as soon as they were connected without hunting for a driver CD-ROM or navigating a device manager list. Around the same time, Apple's iMac launched with USB ports and no legacy connectors at all. No serial, no parallel, no ADB. That machine forced peripheral makers to treat USB as a primary interface rather than an optional extra. The combination of reliable operating system support and a high-profile hardware bet sent a signal to the rest of the industry. The transition was no longer theoretical. Controller silicon made the economics irreversible. As USB host controllers dropped in cost and began appearing as integrated features on motherboard chipsets, the marginal expense of adding USB support to a new machine approached zero. Motherboard spec sheets from the late 90s began listing 2, then 4, then 6 USB ports as standard. PCI USB expansion cards offered a cheap retrofit path for older systems. the per-port cost shrank until it became irrational for a board manufacturer to omit USB entirely. That math created a feedback loop. More ports meant more incentive for peripheral makers to prioritize USB, which meant more devices on retail shelves with USB Type-B printer ports and USB Type-A cables packed inside the box, which meant more users defaulting to USB without making a conscious decision to adopt it. Hubs accelerated the arithmetic further. A single bus-powered hub, a small plastic brick with 4 downstream ports, could turn one motherboard connection into a modest peripheral cluster, a mouse, a keyboard, a card reader, a desk lamp. Self-powered hubs with a wall wart power adapter handled hungrier devices. The physical topology of a desk changed. Instead of routing 3 or 4 different cable types to the back of a tower, a single USB cable could run to a hub sitting within arm's reach, and every peripheral connected from there. Cable management trays grew simpler, and the drawer of adapters grew lighter. None of that expansion would have held together without enforcement. A connector standard that any manufacturer could claim to support without verification would have risked collapsing into the same fragmentation it was designed to replace. The organization overseeing USB compliance operated interoperability testing programs that checked devices against the specification under controlled conditions. Products that passed could carry standardized branding, a compliance mark on the packaging, a certification reference in the documentation. In practice, the rigor of enforcement varied, and plenty of budget peripherals reached retail shelves with loose adherence to the process. Still, the existence of a compliance framework mattered. It gave larger buyers, enterprise purchasing departments, OEM integrators, and retail chains with return rate sensitivity a baseline to reference when qualifying products. Certified interoperability reduced risk across the supply chain, even if it never guaranteed perfection at the individual device level. That framework compressed uncertainty more than it eliminated it. A help desk technician stocking an office IT deployment cart could order USB peripherals from several vendors and expect a broadly consistent installation experience. A consumer scanning a retail shelf could look for familiar packaging cues and skip the mental arithmetic of connector matching. The compliance infrastructure worked best as a shared floor, a minimum threshold that made cross-brand compatibility plausible enough to sustain the ecosystem's growth. Legacy ports did not disappear overnight. For several years, motherboards shipped with transitional I/O layouts, USB ports, alongside a parallel connector, a serial header, and a pair of PS2 sockets. Manuals from the early 2000s still included setup instructions for serial and parallel devices, even as the corresponding sections grew shorter with each hardware revision. Adapter dongles, USB to serial and USB to parallel, sold steadily, serving industrial equipment, older printers, and specialized lab instruments that had no USB native replacement. The transition looked, from the outside, like a slow fade. Beneath the surface, the economics were decisive. Every legacy port on a motherboard occupied physical space on the I/O shield, consumed a trace route on the circuit board, and required driver maintenance in the operating system. Every help desk call about a parallel printer conflict or a PS2 keyboard detection failure carried a support cost that USB's class driver model had effectively eliminated for common peripherals. When manufacturers calculated the bill, board space, driver support, return rates, phone support volume, the legacy connectors stopped paying for themselves. Rear panel layouts simplified. Expansion card brackets lost their serial headers. Driver disks stopped shipping. The disappearance was gradual until, for most users, it was simply complete. The expectation that took root was simple. Plug a cable in it, the device works. No manual required. Hot swapping without a restart became routine. Every connection still triggers the same sequence the specification laid out decades ago. The host controller detects a device, requests its descriptor, matches it to a driver, and opens communication, all in the time it takes to glance at a screen. A peripheral ecosystem that spans continents and price points is held together by enumeration logic, class drivers, and a compliance infrastructure most users never think about. Standards succeed when they make the ordinary case cheap and repeatable. USB did not win by being the best connector for every task. It won by making integration less expensive than improvisation and then making that savings available on every motherboard, every hub, and every device box on the shelf.